12 foods people should consider buying before September 1st, 2026. Not because they're going to disappear from supermarkets after that date, but because this is when prices, package sizes, and promotions could start changing. Back-to-school season is pushing demand for convenient foods higher. Atlantic hurricane season is moving into its most active period. Meanwhile, heat, drought, and crop disruptions are starting to show up in the fall supply. The first sign may not be an empty shelf. It may just be a can of tomatoes costing a few dozen cents more, a bag of flour no longer being on sale, or a bag of frozen fruit that looks the same as before but weighs less. This is not a call to stockpile, but if your family regularly uses these items, buying the right amount before September could help reduce the risk of paying more for less product. And the first item is showing the clearest warning signs. 12. Ground beef. If your family regularly uses ground beef, this is one item worth considering buying in the right amount before September 1st. Not because ground beef is about to disappear, but because prices have already risen sharply, while supply cannot recover quickly. The U.S. cattle herd is at its lowest level in about 75 years. USDA projects beef and veal prices in 2026 to rise about 10.7%, while farm-level cattle prices rise 11.6%. The pressure is already showing up in the market. In June, beef and veal prices were 11.8% higher than a year earlier, while wholesale prices were 12.7% higher. Tyson also just announced it is closing or selling another 3 facilities tied to beef because of cattle shortages and losses. The chain of pressure is very clear. The cattle herd shrinks. Plants have less supply coming in. Processing volume tightens. Retail prices remain under pressure. Even if ranchers start rebuilding herds, breeding calves, raising them, and getting them into the supply chain takes years. Supply cannot recover in a few months. So watch the price per pound and buy when there is a real sale. Family packs can be cheaper, but they only offer value if you portion and freeze them right away. Don't just look at the price on the label. 80/20 may cost less, but it also produces more fat when cooked. Higher fat ground beef often works well for hamburgers, while leaner ground beef may be more convenient for tacos, chili, or pasta sauce. Still, the best choice depends on the price after accounting for the fat that gets drained off. Before buying marked-down meat, make sure it is still cold, the package is sealed, and there are no leaks. The sell-by date is mainly used for store display management, but products close to that date should be cooked or frozen as soon as you get home. Divide the meat into portions for one meal. Flatten the bags so they freeze faster, thaw faster, and stack more easily. Write the date, weight, and lean-to-fat ratio on each bag. When cooking, you can combine the meat with beans, vegetables, or potatoes to stretch the number of servings. Raw ground beef should only stay in the refrigerator for about 1 to 2 days. If kept continuously frozen at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, equivalent to -18 degrees Celsius or below, it should be used within about 3 to 4 months for the best quality. That is a quality guideline, not the point when the meat automatically becomes unsafe. The 3 safe ways to thaw it are in the refrigerator, in cold water, or in the microwave. If you use cold water or the microwave, cook it immediately. Do not thaw it on the counter, and do not wash raw meat, because splashing water can spread bacteria. When cooking, the center must reach at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 71 degrees Celsius. Don't rely on color. Use a food thermometer. The goal is not to fill your freezer. The goal is to buy the right amount while the price per pound is still reasonable, as tight supply could continue putting pressure on your beef bill. 11. Coffee. A bag of coffee is still sitting in the same familiar spot on the shelf. The packaging hasn't changed. The weight hasn't dropped. But the price may have already gone up before a single coffee bean is lost in the field. A strong El Niño can bring hotter, drier weather to Vietnam and Indonesia, two countries that produce about half of the world's Robusta. Brazil, the largest Arabica producer, can also be affected if temperatures and rainfall move outside their normal patterns. The crop may not fail, but traders, roasters, and importers already have to price in the possibility of lower production. That means coffee prices can react months in advance, while damage in the fields is still unclear. Imported coffee is also affected by shipping costs, exchange rates, and changes in trade policy. When new bean contracts become more expensive, the adjustments can show up in several ways: higher shelf prices, fewer promotions, or the same price with a smaller bag. Three things worth checking are promotions, net weight, and price per ounce. A deal when buying 2 bags may disappear before the shelf price changes. A new bag may also look almost identical to the old one while holding less coffee. A larger bag is not always a bargain. If the second half loses its flavor before you use it, the lower price per ounce no longer delivers much value. Households with a grinder should prioritize sealed whole bean coffee and grind only what they need for each brew. Whole beans usually hold their flavor better because they have less exposure to air. If you use pre-ground coffee, the bag size should match how quickly you actually drink it. The biggest value in coffee comes from being able to maintain the habit of brewing at home instead of regularly buying individual cups outside. But cheaper coffee can still become waste if it loses flavor or gets forgotten. Once opened, coffee should be stored in an airtight, dark container in a cool, dry place. Avoid areas above the stove, next to the dishwasher, or exposed to sunlight. Heat, light, moisture, and air all cause the aroma to fade. For the best quality, opened coffee should be used within about 1 to 2 weeks. If you buy several smaller bags at a good price, keep them sealed and open only one at a time. A clear container sitting near light may look nice, but it is not ideal for storage. If you keep coffee in the refrigerator or freezer, divide it into smaller portions and seal it very tightly to prevent moisture, food odors, and condensation when you take it out. The best buy date mainly reflects quality. Weak aroma and flat flavor usually mean the coffee is getting old. But if the coffee gets damp, smells unusual, or shows mold, throw it away. With coffee, the advantage is not in buying a huge amount. It is in getting a good price without sacrificing the freshness of those last cups. 10. Baking chocolate and cocoa powder. The same price doesn't necessarily mean the same amount of cocoa is still inside. Someone is getting ready to make brownies from the same familiar recipe. The flour is the same, the eggs haven't changed. But the new bag of chocolate chips is lighter than the last one, even though the design looks almost identical. About half of the world's cocoa supply comes from Ivory Coast and Ghana. El Niño can make West Africa hotter or push rainfall outside the pattern cocoa trees need. If production drops, U.S. shoppers may feel the impact through higher prices, smaller bags, or changes in recipes. 2 bags of chocolate chips at the same price do not necessarily offer the same value. Check the net weight, price per ounce, and ingredients. If vegetable oil is used to replace part of the cocoa butter, the flavor, texture, and melting behavior can be different. For baking, the 3 most common forms serve different purposes. Chocolate chips work well for cookies and muffins because they are designed to hold their shape. Baking bars are better for ganache, brownies, or recipes that need chocolate to melt evenly. Unsweetened cocoa powder is flexible for cakes, hot drinks, and dessert sauces. Another important detail is that natural cocoa and Dutch processed cocoa are not always interchangeable. Their different acidity levels can affect leavening, color, and cake texture. If a recipe calls for a specific type, it is better to use that type. When buying, calculate based on what your family actually makes, instead of choosing the largest package just because the price per ounce is lower. Chocolate and cocoa also need to be kept sealed, dry, and away from heat. If chocolate develops a white or gray coating, that may simply be bloom caused by fat or sugar crystallizing. It can make the chocolate look less glossy or feel more crumbly, but it is not the same as mold. If it smells rancid, shows signs of moisture, or has mold, throw it away. With cocoa, the bargain is not in familiar-looking packaging. It is in the amount of actual ingredient inside, and how many batches your family can still make for every dollar you paid. 9. Sugar. The price of a bag of sugar is only the most visible part. A bag of white sugar may not be much more expensive yet. But sugar is not just in the baking aisle. It also shows up in cookies, cereal, yogurt, candy, soft drinks, sauces, and many other processed foods. So even a small move in sugar prices can spread across the entire grocery cart before shoppers realize it. The current risk is coming from several producing regions at the same time. Brazil supplies about half of global sugar exports. El Niño can bring more rain to sugarcane regions in the second half of the year. And if that rain arrives during harvest, fieldwork and cane quality can both be affected. In India and Thailand, the risk runs in the opposite direction. The monsoon can turn drier as El Niño strengthens. India's monsoon rainfall in 2026 is forecast to reach only about 90% of average, the lowest level in roughly 11 years. Even a moderate El Niño could reduce the country's sugar output by around 1 million tons. But this is not a story of sugar prices moving straight up. In June, the global sugar price index fell 5.7% from the previous month. By July, the index had climbed back 5.6% as the market grew more concerned about weather in Asia and the possibility that more cane in Brazil would be diverted to ethanol. Even though the index was still about 8% lower than a year earlier, the reversal in just 1 month shows how quickly the market can react when crop expectations change. And there is one special factor. Sugarcane is not only used to make sugar. In Brazil, mills can adjust how much cane goes towards sugar or ethanol. If ethanol becomes more economically attractive, a larger share of cane can go toward fuel. If your family regularly bakes, sweetens tea, or makes preserves, white sugar is still the most versatile choice. Brown sugar makes sense for recipes that truly call for it. Specialty sugar is only worth buying if your household uses it regularly. For storage, sugar's biggest enemy is moisture. White sugar can harden into lumps, while brown sugar usually becomes hard when it loses moisture. Once opened, keep sugar in a clean, dry, airtight container and away from areas with a lot of steam. Cereal, candy, bottled drink, and sauce manufacturers use sugar in large volumes. When sugar prices rise along with packaging, labor, and transportation, the impact can show up as fewer promotions, smaller packages, or higher shelf prices. 1 or 2 bags bought at the right time is enough. Because with sugar, the most noticeable change may not be on the bag of sugar itself. It may quietly show up across dozens of other products in your grocery cart. 8. Cooking oil. 1 bottle of oil on the shelf can be under pressure from several markets at once. Cooking oil is different from many other products because the same crop can serve food, industrial processing, or fuel. In June, the International Vegetable Oil Price Index rose 3.8% from the previous month and was 23.3% higher than a year earlier. By July, the index rose another 2%. reaching its highest level since June 2022. But not every oil moved higher. Palm oil and soybean oil rose, while sunflower oil and rapeseed oil fell. That shows how pressure can shift when major buyers move from one oil to another. Sunflower oil is one of the clearest examples. Disruptions around the Black Sea region delayed about 150,000 tons of sunflower oil that had been expected to ship in August and September. India's sunflower oil imports in August are forecast to fall to around 180,000 tons. But demand for cooking oil does not disappear. India is expected to increase soybean oil imports to around 620,000 tons. One shipment in India is not going to immediately raise cooking oil prices in the US. The important point is that major buyers are competing in the same global vegetable oil market. Pressure also comes from biofuels. Palm oil in Indonesia and soybean oil in some markets can be used for biofuel. If fuel becomes more economically attractive, some of that supply can be pulled away from the food market. For your household, prioritize canola, vegetable oil, or whatever oil your family actually uses. Don't buy an oversized jug just because the price per ounce is lower. Oil can oxidize from heat, light, and air. Keep the cap tightly closed, store it away from the stove, and use older bottles first. If the oil develops a waxy, paint-like, or old cardboard smell, it should not be used. Because the issue with cooking oil is not one individual type of oil, it is the domino effect. One source gets disrupted, buyers shift to another, while food and fuel keep competing for the same oil crops. 7. Rice supply is not short yet, but the market's cushion is getting thinner. Rice is not scarce in US supermarkets, and international prices in July were almost unchanged from the previous month. However, the FAO Rice Price Index was still 4.7% higher than a year earlier. Here in the US, USDA raised its forecast for the average farm price of rice for the 2026-2027 marketing year by $1.40 to about $14.90 per hundredweight. Ending stocks are also forecast to fall to their lowest level in 4 years. That does not mean there is a shortage, but it does mean the market has less cushion if weather or policy changes unexpectedly. El Niño is one of the risks worth watching. Many major rice-growing regions in Asia depend heavily on seasonal rainfall. If conditions become hotter and drier right when rice plants need water, production could come under pressure. With rice, another factor that matters just as much is export policy. The clearest precedent came in 2023, when India restricted exports of certain types of rice. International buyers quickly looked for alternative supplies, and global prices reacted sharply. That does not mean another restriction is about to happen. But it shows how quickly the market can change when a major exporter prioritizes domestic supply. Export prices and international contracts usually react first. The impact on a bag of rice in a US supermarket may come later through importers, distributors, and existing inventories. So choose the type your family actually eats. If you regularly use white rice, it is usually a better choice for buying in larger quantities because the oil-containing bran and germ have been removed. Brown rice still contains the natural oils in the bran, so it can develop a rancid smell sooner. If your family uses it slowly, smaller bags usually make more sense. A large bag is only worth buying if you have an airtight container, a dry storage area, and a fast enough rate of use. With rice, the warning sign is not an empty shelf. It is when inventories are thinner, weather risks are greater, and one policy decision in Asia can move the market before US shoppers see any obvious change on the price tag. 6. Flour wheat prices react first. flour prices on the shelf react later. A bag of all-purpose flour can stay almost the same price over several grocery trips, even after the wheat market behind it has started moving. In July, world wheat prices rose 5.8% from the previous month and were 9.9% higher than a year earlier. Pressure came from several directions: disruptions around the Black Sea region, damage to export infrastructure, and heat in some producing areas. Here in the US, USDA also lowered its wheat production forecast to the lowest level since 1970. That does not mean flour will suddenly become scarce on store shelves. The important point is the lag. Wheat and commodity contracts can move first, while flour prices are still affected by when ingredients were purchased, existing inventory levels, and how retailers adjust prices. So the bag of flour on the shelf today may still reflect ingredient costs and contracts that were set earlier. If your family regularly makes pancakes, biscuits, bread, or basic baked goods, all-purpose flour is usually the most practical choice because it can work across many recipes without requiring several different types of flour. But a larger bag does not always offer better value. Flour can absorb moisture, pick up odors, and become vulnerable to pantry pests if it is stored too long. If pantry pests are a concern, you can freeze newly purchased flour for a few days. After that, let the sealed bag return completely to room temperature before opening it and transferring the flour into an airtight container to help limit condensation. Then keep the flour in a dry place, away from heat, and check it periodically for insects, unusual odors, or signs of moisture. If your family only uses flour a few times a year, a smaller bag that gets rotated regularly usually makes more sense than a large bag sitting in the pantry for too long. With flour, the thing to watch is not one sudden price spike. It is the gap between when the wheat market changes and when shoppers actually see that change show up on the bag of flour. 5. Pasta. A cheap box of pasta does not necessarily make a cheap meal. Pasta and all-purpose flour both start with wheat, but they do not use exactly the same type of wheat. Most dried pasta is made from durum wheat or semolina, a high-protein wheat that creates the firm texture associated with spaghetti, penne, or macaroni. So pasta is connected to the wheat market, but it does not necessarily react exactly the same way as a bag of flour on the shelf. What matters more for shoppers is the cost per serving. A box of pasta may go up by only 20 or 30 cents. That sounds very small, but for a product that only costs a few dollars to begin with, the percentage increase can be significant. And the box of pasta is only the first part of the meal. Then there is sauce, cheese, ground beef or chicken, even cooking oil. If all of those ingredients go up too, a familiar pasta meal can become much more expensive than the change on the box itself suggests. That is why store brands are worth checking. For basic shapes like spaghetti, penne, or elbow macaroni, store brands often do the same job as more expensive products, but at a lower price per pound. A multi-pack is not automatically a bargain either. Compare the price per pound between single boxes, multi-packs, and store brands. A promotion that looks attractive can still cost more than the regular option when you compare the same weight. Sales are also a useful signal to watch, but they do not need to become the main focus. If pasta used to regularly show up in multi-box deals at low prices, and those promotions start becoming less common, the household's real cost has already gone up even if the shelf price has not changed much. Dried pasta has the major advantage of not needing a freezer and being able to store well for quite a while. But buy the shapes your family actually eats. A box of specialty pasta sitting untouched for months has no value just because it was on sale. With pasta, the best question is not, how cheap is this box? It is, How many servings can I actually get from this box? And how much will that entire meal cost? Chapter 4. Tuna, salmon, and canned seafood. Two cans that look the same size do not necessarily contain the same amount of usable fish. Canned seafood is facing a very different set of pressures from the agricultural products we have already covered. According to July data, prices for shelf-stable fish and seafood in the U.S. were 6.1% higher than a year earlier, while processed fish and seafood rose about 6.4%. For canned tuna, salmon, and similar seafood, costs can be affected by catch volumes, quotas, fuel for fishing vessels, transportation, and imported supply. But there is one very practical detail right on the can: packing medium. Tuna can be packed in water, oil, or broth. Two cans can have the same net weight, but the amount of fish left after draining the liquid may not be exactly the same. When buying, check the net weight and, if the manufacturer provides it, the drained weight. If drained weight is not listed, compare the serving size, number of servings, and packing medium between similar cans. This is especially useful when one can look 20 or 30 cents cheaper. The lower price does not necessarily mean you are getting more usable fish. Canned tuna is usually the more economical and familiar option for sandwiches, salads, or casseroles. Canned salmon can cost more, but it makes sense if your family actually uses it regularly. There is no need to choose a premium version just because it is on sale. And with canned food, the condition of the can matters more than a small bargain. Avoid cans that are bulging, leaking, heavily rusted, or deeply dented, especially when the dent is on a seam or near the lid. Cans that are still in good condition should be rotated using the oldest ones first. Another thing worth watching is serving size. If two cans are close in price but one gives your household more actual servings, that is the more useful comparison. With canned seafood, there is no need to turn shopping into a complicated math problem. Just look at three things: the type of fish, the amount of product you are actually getting, and the condition of the can. Because the value of canned seafood is not in the size of the container. It is in the amount of fish that can actually make it onto the table after the can is opened. 3. Canned tomatoes and tomato sauce. Most of America's tomato pantry depends on one producing region. Canned tomatoes do not follow the same supply chain as fresh tomatoes sold in the produce section. Most canned tomatoes, tomato paste, ketchup, pizza sauce, and many types of pasta sauce in the U.S. use processing tomatoes. Varieties grown specifically for processing, usually harvested by machine and sold under contract. And this market is heavily concentrated in California. California supplies about 90 to 95% of U.S. processing tomatoes. In 2026, contracted processing tomato production in California is estimated at about 9.9 million tons, below the roughly 11 million tons projected for the previous season. That does not mean canned tomatoes are about to run short, but when raw material supply tightens, a smaller volume has to be spread across many product lines, from whole peeled tomatoes and diced tomatoes to paste, ketchup, and sauces. For shoppers, the most useful thing is understanding that each form serves a different purpose. Whole peeled tomatoes are the most flexible because they can be left whole, chopped, or crushed into sauce. Diced tomatoes are convenient for chili, soup, or dishes where you want the pieces to hold their shape. Tomato paste is highly concentrated, so only a small amount is needed to add depth and color, but it cannot directly replace a can of tomatoes in every recipe. And pasta sauce is already a finished product with seasonings, oil, or sugar, so it should be treated as a separate item rather than compared directly with canned tomatoes. If your family cooks many different kinds of meals, Whole-peeled tomatoes usually offer the most flexibility for substitutions. With canned products, avoid cans that are bulging, leaking, or deeply dented near the seam. What matters in this category is not the price of fresh tomatoes in the produce section. It is the fact that one producing region controls most of the raw material behind a wide range of tomato products Americans use every week. 2. Orange juice concentrate. A weakened orange grove cannot be replaced in a single growing season. Orange juice works very differently from most of the foods on this list. A wheat field can be planted again the next season. An orange grove that loses trees cannot. Florida orange production finished the most recent season about 5% higher than the year before, but it still remained near historic lows after years of hurricanes, lost growing acreage, and especially citrus greening. Citrus greening does not just reduce the number of fruit and the quality of the fruit. The disease also gradually weakens trees, reduces yields, and in many cases forces growers to replace them. The problem is that new orange trees take years before they produce meaningful commercial yields. So one slightly better season does not mean the orange industry has recovered. Brazil is also under pressure. Orange production for the 2026 to 2027 season is forecast to fall about 12.9%, while the average number of fruit per tree is projected to drop about 17%. With Florida still near historic lows and Brazil heading into a season projected to decline sharply, the orange juice market may need more time to return to stable conditions. That is why frozen orange juice concentrate is worth watching. One small can can make a much larger amount of orange juice after mixing, so do not look only at the price of the can. Calculate the price per ounce of orange juice after mixing it according to the directions. That tells you how much actual juice one can of concentrate produces for the money you paid. Concentrate only has value if your family actually drinks orange juice and you have enough freezer space. There is no need to buy more than your household will realistically use. The most important thing to remember about orange juice is not just 1 week crop. It is the speed of recovery. When citrus greening or weather weakens an entire grove, supply cannot be rebuilt with just one new planting season. 1. Olive oil. Olive oil is the item on this list that needs the most balanced view. Olive oil deserves to be last on the list because the current story is not as simple as prices are going up. In fact, supply has gone through a significant recovery. The International Olive Council estimates that global olive oil production for the 2024 to 2025 season increased by about 38%, with production in Spain rising sharply after the previous drought-hit seasons. That helped ease supply pressure and shows that olive oil prices do not always move in just one direction. But the summer of 2026 is reminding the market that olive trees are still highly sensitive to weather. Many parts of Europe are experiencing severe heat and drought, while producing regions in Spain, Italy, Greece, and Portugal continue to watch the effects of high temperatures, water shortages, and wildfires on olive crops. So it would not be accurate to say olive oil is definitely about to become scarce, or that prices are certain to rise sharply. The more important point is that the recovery is still uneven. A good harvest can replenish supply, but olive trees are perennial crops. When prolonged drought, extreme heat, or wildfires damage groves, growers cannot simply replant everything the following season. For shoppers, the approach is very simple. If your family regularly uses olive oil, keeping one extra bottle makes sense. Prioritize dark glass bottles or metal tins because light speeds up oxidation. And do not buy an extremely large container just because the price per ounce is lower. Olive oil exposed to heat, light, and air will gradually lose flavor and can turn rancid. A smaller bottle that gets used regularly can sometimes offer more practical value than a large amount of oil sitting in the pantry for months. That is also why olive oil is a fitting way to end the list. One good harvest can give the market some breathing room, but it does not erase the risks facing perennial groves dealing with drought, heat, and increasingly unpredictable weather. None of the items on this list are guaranteed to disappear after September 1st, and no one needs to fill the pantry because of one weather forecast or one round of price increases. What matters is checking what your family actually uses, comparing unit prices, and only buying amounts you can store safely. A larger package is not necessarily cheaper. A promotion is not necessarily a bargain. But a few well-timed choices can help your family avoid paying more this fall. The goal is not to prepare for empty shelves. The goal is to reduce waste and keep better control of your grocery bill. Thanks for watching.